Challenge of education of Bahasa Melayu among student Chinese and Indian in primary school. Let's start.
Assalamualaikum and good morning to everyone. Hi, how are you today? Are you good? This season we are facing with many problems such as virus like COVID, Omicron and now influenza. Hope you always being healthy and put a mindset that our body are strong, healthy and can survive with this issue for living. Before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Nur Syahira binti Suhaini. The ID number 2019942375. Why I'm here? I'm here to share with you all people nowadays. The teachers are facing the challenge of education in Bahasa Melayu among students of Chinese and Indian in primary school. Why the issue still happen? Do you know why? Let me explain why this issue still happen in our country of Malaysia.
Why? Nowadays the teacher are facing the challenge of education in Bahasa Melayu among students.
Let me ask you, is it Malay language very important in our country? Why the Malay language is very important? Nowadays, we are using the Bahasa English in a global, right? So the Malay language is not important. Am I right or not? Of course not, because Malay language is very important in our country. Let me remind again the Malaysian constitution that Malay language is one of the list that is the national language. In a statistic that Malay language, the teacher still facing challenge of education in Malay language among students of Chinese and Indian in primary school. It is very worrying and quite difficult for students to communicate with other races if they do not know the Malay language. According to my survey on Academy of Malay Language, still facing the problem, especially students of Chinese and Indian. In our research, our respondent is 100 students who are getting the grade 8 that only the writing of Malay language of students, Chinese and Indian, that show the percentage of students getting grade of 32.5% equivalent to 120 pupils, followed by grade B of 40.5% of 160 students. Grade C record a total of 20% equivalent to 80 students, and a total of 30 students equivalent to 7.5% achieve grade D in the mark of Malay language writing. The result indicate that the writing level of these students is moderately good. From the research, we are finding that the students still did not know to use or score in Malay language due to their parents mostly using their own language. From that, the students difficult to switch with other language. The parent only important of English language than Malay language. Hence, the parents send their children to Chinese and Indian school. It can make difficult to students for fluent and score in Malay language. I believe that the teacher will agree with my statement. Until now, we are facing to teach the student in Malay language. As you can see my research, the spoken language, they are mostly using their language, and Malay language are only 2.5%. Nowadays, English is a second language, and as we know, Malay began to be a mixed language with a mixture of English. We can see an example of this animated picture. So, today, here I am to persuade every one of you here to aware the importance of Malay language of students Chinese and Indian, because we are in the country of Malaysian and we need to prioritize our language that is the national language and make the Malaysia be proud from the other country. When we go to the other country, most of them cannot fluently to speak in English, especially China, Korean, Germany, and else. We need to speak in their language to communicate with them. They're very proud with their language, so we need to be like them and need teach the children from the early age with our Malay language. We need to be proud with our language.
The challenge of education in Bahasa Melayu.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that it challenged the education among students Chinese and Indian in primary school. First, there are reading problem among school children. Why? Reading problems adversely affect an individual's academic performance. Reading disabilities can also have psychological effect on individual, and if they have good reading skills, their self-development skill lesser. There are many elementary school students who cannot express their thought, opinion, and so on. The attitude of some Malay language teachers is lacking emphasizing reading and speaking skills in the classroom is possible contribute to this situation. For 6th grade elementary school students, they should have master reading skills and be able to understand the word read. Students who have reading problems certainly have certain factors which contribute to those symptoms. In the evaluation of the result of most primary school students, especially those having problems in Malay language writing subject, this is due to their inability to correctly compose sentence. Second, non-interest in reading books, especially Malay book. In this country, the practice of reading is still at a very frustrating level, especially in the rural areas. Despite the interest in reading, most of the reading material revolve around topics that have nothing to do with changing human attitude. The cause is related to society attitude toward the importance of reading. Reading cannot improve its image because the reading aspect is more internal in nature than the invisible effect at first glance, which is to own a stylish vehicle and a larger home out of necessity. Nowadays, gadgets and social media have become widespread and greatly influence the present generation. With technology like this, elementary school students are less likely to read books. In their spare time, they often spend time with gadgets and playing social media as opposed to learning Malay language, subject or reading material to improve their knowledge of the Malay language. In fact, the conversation of the current generation is not like that of the former generation, which is rich in meekness. Generational language or speech styles of the present are very bad and do not symbolize the uniqueness of the Malay language itself. Third, teaching implementation. Sometimes, students don't like reading because of the platform used by the teacher while teaching does not grab their attention. This can to some extent encourage students to read more. Perhaps teachers should insert short video as an attraction to them. When unable to do reading activities or competition with students, there are also a handful of teachers still want to use the old way of teaching students because there are still many among them who don't know how to read books, even about storybook. 4. Pronunciation problems in Malay language. Most parents today prefer to use a second language as a word newly learned, one like English, and some of them prefer using their own accent. The effect of this is to cause students difficult to pronounce new words because they are unfamiliar. Seems trivial, but the implication for the future are enormous as it can result in students who struggle could not follow the student according to the lesson program which the student are the English and others. They have a solution to the problem that is, first, activate existing knowledge. Activating students' existing language skill requires to knowledge so that students can access information stored in their memory. For Malay language teachers, the main goal of Malay language teaching is to ensure students have direct and indirect access to knowledge stored in their mind who may face difficulties to understand a new word or grammar, no matter how long it takes to complete a sentence. Second, stimulate interest. Teachers must encourage students to continue to learn and be passionate about what is being taught, while at the same time students are aware of its importance. Learning and show a positive attitude towards the teaching process. One of the activities that can increase students' interest is the Teach a Friend activity. To enable this activity, students need to have a satisfactory knowledge of what they want to learn. Third, encourage student involvement. Teachers can increase student commitment in understanding Malay language subject by asking students about the meaning stated in a given passage or statement of teachers can also ask opinion from other students to relate their understanding of the topic taught. Mention the students' name in handling activities involving the student. Students will be more involved if they believe that the teacher sees them as an individual rather than as a member without any identity. Students should also be encouraged to interact during the activity by mentioning their name, as this strategy can increase the likelihood the student will actively interact with their classmates and speak their mind when asked. You know what if a fact if the student of Chinese and Indian cannot fluent in Malay language? First is communication. Why communication? What does communication have to do with not being proficient in Malay? Malay is our national language, and in the society in Malaysia, the majority of the community is the Malay community. Most Malays, especially the elderly, are not proficient in speaking English, and it is very difficult for Indian and Chinese to communicate with other nations. Because of that, Malaysia has set Malay as the main language to facilitate communication and strengthen national unity. Society needs to emphasize the Malay language and educate young people from early age to uphold our Malay language. Second, Malay language is one of the compulsory subjects for our SPM examination. As we know, Malay is the national language and Malay language subjects are compulsory to pass. If the student does not pass in Malay language, their SPM certificate cannot be released, and the student has to take the SPM certificate in July to get the SPM certificate. What will happen if the SPM certificate is not obtained? The student are not able to apply for admission in higher education, and it is also quite difficult to apply for job without an SPM certificate. So, the Malay language is important and should not be taken lightly. We need to uphold the Malay language in order to glorify and protect the honor of Malaysia.
Next is conclusion.
In a nutshell, Malay language education in primary school need to be improved, and teachers need to do interesting activities to attract the interest of school children low to master the Malay language. It is very difficult for these Chinese and Indian students because Malay is a second language for them, and the teaching or writing Malay language need to be improved learning in school to attract interest of school children. That's all from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.